Welcome to It's a Broker Thing podcast, brought to you by Bluestone Home Loans. Each episode will dive into market updates, practical insights, and real stories for brokers who want to stay ahead, build stronger relationships, and grow their business. Let's dive in. SMSF lending has spent years in the too hard basket for brokers, but right now it's back in the spotlight. The federal budget has just introduced major shake-up with new residential SMSF lending set to be banned, and brokers are already seeing the ripple effects play out in real time. On today's episode, we'll talk about what the SMSF lending ban actually means for brokers on the ground, why some clients are rushing and why others are pausing, and whether SMSF is about to become more niche or more relevant than ever. And joining me today is one of my colleagues, Richard Chesworth, or as we know him as Ches, who's our Head of Specialist Distribution at Bluestone. Ches, welcome to It's a Broker Thing.
It's great to be here, Tony. And what a time to come on to It's a Broker Thing. To see this journey, I was just thinking, it's coming up to 18 years, and it's the biggest change I think that's hit the self-managed super world since the legislation came into play in 2007. Now, this time later, it's now coming to an end on resi purchases.
So,
with borrowings.
You're sought after in the market in self-managed super fund. We actually had to, work around your schedule to even get you in here on the podcast. But and you're known as having a finger on the pulse in the SMSF world. Was this a surprise to you?
It was, and I always have a disclaimer. I know the lending world back to front, and it's one portion of it, but I'm really passionate about the lending space. It was a surprise to me. And to put it into context, I think Tuesday morning last week, literally, I was having my cereal and I opened up the Fin Review on my phone and I thought, there's another story about the Greens wanting to attack self-managed super fund lending. And I read the article and I thought, actually, this is pretty concerning. And then by late that morning, the government came out and announced they were going to support the ban. So it took me by surprise. It's taken the industry by surprise, how rapid that change has pushed through there. Really, I think the first murmurings was late Monday. Right. And then it came through.
Yeah, I must admit, I think we spoke on Tuesday, and I was in Singapore, and I was over in Singapore with my brother, and we sat down for breakfast and lobbed that piece of information on the table, and I certainly had not heard any rumblings around it. So
yeah,
I think caught everyone.
It has taken us by surprise, and I was actually chatting to someone in the street the other day. Their view was a last piece they left on the table as that final bargaining chip for the government to get the changes through. Whether that was the case, we can't speculate. It's happened now. And so now's what do we do moving forward? And, how do we manage the immediate time frame and on from there?
Yeah, so it's a good point because it's passed the Senate. It'll go back to the House on Thursday, I think, tomorrow, and then will go to the Governor General to be passed. So it looks like the banning of residential lending in SMSF will go through.
It's actually underway.
What are brokers seeing then today, and what are you hearing from brokers?
I think one way I've framed the SMSF lending market over the years has been there's been so much more talk than activity. And I think that's the case now. There's a lot of talk out there. There's a lot of pushing down different channels. Some brokers have a lot of matters on their desks they're trying to tidy up. Others are trying to get their heads around things. And I think what we'll probably chat about today is what they need to be mindful of in doing. But yeah, so it depends on the broker's position. But whichever it is, if they're in the resi space, they need to be able to move quickly. But in doing that, really the deadline's coming. It's actually the 9th of August is the last date you'll be able to sign a contract to purchase a residential property in a self-managed super fund with borrowing attached. You can still buy a residential property in the super fund after that, but there's no borrowing attached. So it's when you've got a borrowing requirement there. That's signing the contract. The contract has to be signed by that date. Not the property doesn't have to settle by that date. It can settle, and it could be. I had someone contact us today, and it's for settlements in 2029. Now that's a whole different speculative risk bucket there, going into your super fund out to that date there. So the SMSF trustee is going to be able to have their positions there, but the legislation is the wheels need to be in motion, as in you have to have had signed your contract on the 9th of August. Why I'm saying the 9th? Because the law actually, it comes into play on the 10th. So on the 10th, you can't do it. It's the 9th is the day.
You been inundated with calls? Are you is the 45-day dash started, or are people holding back a little bit?
I know. The clock's ticking.
Yeah.
And it's ticking fast, and yeah, the calls, my phone has been running hot with all sorts of questions. And, you start thinking, actually, you can do this, you can't do that. What do people have to watch out for? I think the main things people need to be doing is, particularly a broker, really focus on what you're licensed to do. And that's the lending assistance and lending advice. And even more so now, if the customer's got a question to you, you're not the person to solve it. You need to work closely with their accountant, with their planner if they have one, with their conveyancer or solicitor. Questions like signing the contract. When do I sign it? What name do I put on it? All those things. In the current time frame and the deadline, and we're just talking resi property here, you want to make sure you're pointing the customer the right direction. The reason I say that is, A, if you've got to sign it in the bare trustee's name. B, I've have questions about, is it in, is it before, does the bare trust have to be set up before or after signing the contract? It falls under trust law. So that's very much a case of, it depends on the state and jurisdiction. Your role as a broker really shouldn't be advising customers down that path. And the other two things to watch out for is the single acquirable asset rule. It has to meet, so there's three things. It's the single acquirable asset, or getting your contract bare trust set up properly. Is it a single acquirable asset? Does it meet that requirement? And thirdly, is the contract signed in the right name? If you get any of those last two things wrong, and you've got to rescind your contract, and it's on the 10th of August onwards,
you're in a world of pain.
Yeah. I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, and again, this is where people need to get their legal advice. You can't rescind a contract and then go back into a contract when it's banned. So timing is key. And again, for brokers, making sure you're actually helping the customer by leveraging their right advice channels.
So it seems to me that there's never been a more important time for brokers to ensure that they've got those strong relationships with accountants, with solicitors, those trusted advisors out in the marketplace, not only for business, but for ensuring they're doing the correct and right sort of business.
That's right. And I think if it's your customer, you can and by all means, put the onus on the customer. They're the trustee of the self-managed super fund. They are ultimately responsible for their actions. And they sign that in their declaration when they step up to being running a self-managed super fund. It's not as easy as generally people say. There is responsibility comes with that flexibility. But in saying that, rather than putting just the onus on them, say to them, what's your accountant's name if you don't know? What's your solicitor's name, if not conveyancer, or their planner? Let's get on the phone now and actually talk to them together. So you're showing to that customer and then their other referral partners, you're working with each other. Because, hate to say it, you might find for some brokers, an SMSF loan doesn't come across their desk that often. It's exactly the same for a solicitor or a conveyancer. So that thing of, actually, is this a single acquirable asset? Because I can see it's a unit and a car space. And in Victoria, to all the Victorians out there, don't be fooled by saying it's an accessory lot. Yes, you'd think that's the case, but under that accessory lot, unless there's a restriction they have to be sold together, they can only be sold together, they are separate acquirable assets. Just amplifying the need for you to support your customers by leveraging their other advisors who are, legally and responsible in those specific lanes.
So this is a series of changes that the government have made, largely to investors.
Yeah.
But it's not the death of property investment. So if we stick to SMSF, it's just residential borrowings in an SMSF. There's still other opportunities for an SMSF trust to do borrowings and to get into property, correct?
There is. I think let's take a step back. And I think if you look at self-managed super fund world, there's, over $1 trillion of assets sitting in there. 11% of those, 11.3% of those assets are securing what's called the limited recourse borrowing arrangement. And that makes up around 11.3% of SMSFs have a limited recourse borrowing arrangement. And those limited recourse borrowing arrangements represent about 6.9% of the total assets, which is sitting around $70 billion in the fund, thereabouts. $38 billion of that is residential property. So we've seen a big change for a small part of the market. Those residential properties secure around $13 billion worth of loans. So it's, we've had a massive change for a small part of the market. So where does the opportunity lie? People are still in a position, and there's actually a lot of unleveraged property, residential and commercial, or non-residential, because I'm talking farms and everything, in a self-managed super fund, and then a portion is geared. But where does the gearing still lie? It falls into what you call business real property, which is assets which you use 100% for commercial business use, and which actually aligns in some cases really well in the SMSF segment, particularly for your self-employed and investor market.
And how has that market been growing over the last few years? I know there's more and more players into it, but is it growing as an investment avenue strongly?
I think borrowing in super itself as a whole, and I haven't actually gone down and thought how's each. I think resi did run stronger than commercial, as in the number of purchases, because generally, rightly or wrongly, and I'm not going to make a call on whether it's an appropriate investment or not, because I'm not licensed for that, people have an appetite for residential property, so they're buying that. It is an investment avenue. The commercial side is either investment or for that business use on a full arm's length basis. It's been consistent. So, I was just doing the numbers in my head before. SMSF lending on, I think, the 17th of September this year would have been its 19th birthday. So you're coming up to 19 years. I say it's a mature market now. So you've got people who have borrowed to buy property, have either sold the property or they've paid the debt out. You've got other ones who are refinancing, and you've got others now purchasing and continue. And when there's a borrowing in play, that will still happen in the non-residential segment. So again, that business real property market. So it's all I'd say is it's consistent, and self-managed super fund has grown over the years. Performance has grown. But it's funny, I was looking at the stats, and I like to be transparent in this market. I looked at the total number of assets with borrowing against it compared to the total super balances. Back in 2019-20 was 7.5% of the total SMSF asset balance. It's actually, in the 2024 figures, and that's what we've got to go off because the 2025 still haven't been fully finalised, it was down to 6.9%. So it's a consistent market, and I feel it'll be consistent going forward. Will people elect, if they want to have that geared exposure in super, to switch to commercial? It is a different asset type, so people do need to do their homework.
I'll come back to the commercial piece because I just want to explore that. But I think it's worth just emphasising that if you've currently got a residential limited recourse loan in your super, that gets grandfathered and you're not impacted. And if you sign a contract on a new purchase by the 9th of August, you still get the same benefits and are allowed to do it.
Correct. So they're grandfathered. But that doesn't mean just let them sit there. I think as an industry as a whole and as the SMSF trustees, I think that management of the existing loan has been underserved by everyone. It's a passive lend. It's out of your personal balance sheet. It's sitting over the sides here on your super fund. So you're not watching the transactions in and out. If I'm having a new borrowing myself, it's not impacting it. So unfortunately, brokers may not have raised the question about what are you doing with that old loan. Accountants aren't asking it. So what I've seen is interest rates, where I'm looking at one at the moment. It is a commercial one, but I've seen exactly the same in the resi space. We're looking to refinance this loan in the 7% range. It's with another lender who's still active in the market at the moment, but the rate has risen in the background into the mid-11s. So refinance is key. Again, the resi space, you can still refinance. And if you've got direct costs related to maintaining your borrowing, as in I've got a break cost from another lender or this, that, and the other, you can actually build that in on top of the refinance balance. There's no cash out, but maintaining the borrowing is the direct cost in maintaining that facility. So you can fund that as well. There's a little catch there, and I don't normally talk this down the broker channels. Be mindful, and this is more, again, the accountant's role, is if it was originally done before 30th of June 2018, speak to the accountant to see if that will have any impact on their total super balance calculations. So that's just a tip to take away, not for a broker to advise on or anything like that, but to direct the customer or to speak to the accountant on that, because that may have implications. It may not as well.
You mentioned that residential lending in SMSF has probably been the stronger growth engine. People get residential, like we all live in a house and we get what that is. Commercials, a little bit different. What is different, and what are the pitfalls or things that brokers need to be aware of to lend in commercial?
Yeah, I think commercial, there's two sides of the coin here when it comes to borrowing for commercial, again, non-residential or business real property in the SMSF space. Is it for an investment use? So if it's for an investment use, you're going to acquire the property. What are you going to do for tenancy? We don't have the capacity issues we're seeing in the residential market. So what's your plan if you're buying a commercial property and it's investment purposes to have a tenant in place? What are the costs you've got to outlay to get that tenancy in place? Then what's the lease terms going to be? Is it a 3-year lease? Is it increases with CPI and the like? So it's seeing you've got to build the lease terms and also have the property itself and have contingencies for that potential vacancy period, which might be 6, maybe 12 months, to get that tenancy in place. We go down shopping strips and, we're here in Sydney, so Parramatta Road, we see a lot of vacancies there. So it's understanding the property, it's understanding its use and the appetite. On the flip side, if it's an individual buying, so you've stepped out, you may have had a career in banking and working with Bluestone for years, and suddenly I've had a change of heart and I've finished there and I've got my own business. I like bikes. So I might go, I'm going to start a bike shop and I'll get mechanics in there, mechanic work, and I could go and rent a premises, and I might turn around and say, okay, is it suitable for me? And I think that's the big question. Is it suitable to open your self-managed super fund? Yes or no? Ideally, I'd seek advice on that. And then I set up my self-managed super fund. And then I might say, rather than renting elsewhere, I might go and buy a commercial premises. And that means I've got continuity of, I know when my premises are going to be. The landlord's not going to shut down on me. The landlord's not going to put up the rent. I know where it is. And the other benefit is, if I buy that property in my self-managed super fund as well as continuity, there's an asset there. And rather than my rent going elsewhere, my rent's actually going to my super as well as my contributions. The key there is any transaction you're doing between a related party and a self-managed super fund, it needs to be on arm's length terms. It needs to be a formal lease in place, and it needs to be an enforceable lease. So it goes down to the extent of making sure that would be on a market rate, the rent. It's paid monthly. You should be showing that, because these are the things that come up in the audits. The other attractive thing about commercial, unlike resi, in a resi space, I can't buy the property from a related party. And that related party goes through as far as you want to get really technical. I've got a partnership in a racehorse with someone. Well, they're a related party because that's deemed a partnership. It could stretch that far, and you need to be more mindful of that, I think, in the commercial segment. But in the commercial space, I can buy that property from myself into my fund or a related party into the fund. Once again, it's keeping it on an arm's length basis, making sure you're purchasing at market value. I look at this segment, and the ATO has probably one of the strongest data matching systems in the world. And if I'm selling my commercial property to my self-managed super fund, it would most likely pick up in their system that that's happened. Not saying it will, but it may pick up. And if I've thought this is great, I'm going to, for example, the property's worth 1.8 million, and I know that, but I'm going to do a contract for 1.25 million. Now, the ATO will most likely go, well, okay, let's look at this. The purchase has gone through. If they don't get you on the purchase price, they may get you on the yield on the property, which may have gone from, 10% to 14% or 15%. Is that an appropriate yield? So you've just got to do things right. It's not a way of cutting corners. You want to protect yourself, dot the I's, cross the T's, have everything at arm's length basis, because the last thing you want to do is blow up your retirement savings.
Mate, you're not going to believe this, but we've run out of time. And if you just tuned in, we've been listening to the Richard Chesworth show talking about self-managed super funds. No, mate, pleasure to have you on. Wouldn't mind getting you back because I know you're passionate about some of the behaviour that's going on in the marketplace at the moment, and brokers have got to be really careful about some of the spruiking that's going on with property developers, and make sure that they don't go down that path and fall into those traps. Pleasure to have you, and thank you for joining us on another episode of It's a Broker Thing. Make sure that you subscribe for more insights, and we'll see you on the next episode. That's a wrap of this episode of It's a Broker Thing, brought to you by Bluestone Home Loans. We love sharing ideas that help you stay ahead, because backing brokers, well, it's a Bluestone thing. Hit subscribe and join us next time for more insights and stories that keep you in the know. This podcast is for general education only and isn't financial, legal or tax advice. Guest views are their own. Bluestone accepts no liability for errors or how you use this information.